Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz, and as always, our ever vigilant Dr. Joe Hamlett. How are you doing today, Dr. Joe Hamlett?
I am doing well. Sounds like you had a lot of D's, Dr. Joe, Dr. Dave.
A lot of
But
coffee
no, I'm
too.
doing, yeah, me too. We both probably shouldn't do this after we've had so much coffee, but this is how we start our day. But I'm doing great. So thanks for asking.
Most excellent, most excellent. So, in our usual fashion of bantering back and forth, we're going to introduce a topic, play hot potato. I'm going to throw it back over to you. We're going to bounce it around a little bit, and then we're going to talk about how this topic applies to our personal and professional environments. Again, trying to help you all think a little bit further, a little bit wider, a little bit broader, maybe a different angle. And today's topic is, drum roll please, applying what you have. And we're not
Yep,
talking about those material things, not all the cars and Ferraris and boats sitting in your driveway, not the 500 mansions that everyone owns as a
of
standard
course.
issue.
Right. Yeah.
It's what's up in the gray matter, what's up in the noggin, folks. That's what we're talking about, applying what you have. So,
Okay.
Dr. Joe, a penny for your thoughts.
Well, thanks, Dave. Thanks for handing that off. Yeah, applying what you have, that's very interesting. As we've talked about many times on previous episodes, just the idea that most of the things we talk about or discuss intertwine with something else. So this is appropriate that we talk about applying what you have. So just think about this. Um, Skills that you've learned, knowledge that you've acquired over the years, how can you apply that to something else, right? That's what we're talking about. So perfect example. Again, I probably used this example before, probably more than once, but the idea that I was an aircraft mechanic for a lot of years, right, for the Air Force and then civilian capacity as well. But so learning the different schedules and preventive maintenance and those types of things that you have to do to an airplane is very important, right? Especially when you're talking about people flying airplanes that you would think weren't supposed to fly. So a lot of thought goes into maintaining and managing those aircraft. So again, as I transferred or moved into another environment, which was manufacturing, and of course, the criticality is not there as far as people safety and things like that. But some of the concepts and things that were able to transfer was creating some type of maintenance schedule, preventive maintenance, inspections, those types of things, because the company that I began to work for at that time did not understand that concept. And typically the way they, managed or maintained equipment was when it failed, which is not really conducive to effectiveness. And so that's what was happening. When I first started there, we would run equipment until it failed, and then we would scramble, run around, and try and get the machine up and running again because we had no preventive maintenance schedule. We did not inspect things. We did not, take it down periodically. We didn't do any of those things. And so I was able to apply my skills that I had learned as an aircraft mechanic, and I was able to incorporate those into that organization and that manufacturing environment, and we turned it around. It was like a 180-degree flip where we went from very low availability for our equipment to outrunning our other departments because we were taking the time to inspect our equipment. We were paying attention to things that were potentially going to cause us problems. So that was just one example of me taking my aviation aircraft maintenance background and applying that to this new environment, manufacturing, again, where the safety was not as critical, but it made sense for longevity of our equipment. And so that turned into a positive thing. So that's just one example.
Mm-hmm.
And I can go into another example just briefly. Again, most of you all know that I've said it many times too, went to school later in life. And most of my education was online. So when I had the opportunity to become an adjunct professor in that same online environment, I was able to apply those skills that I learned as a student on that platform to now, educate other people on that same platform, because I
Nice.
learned a lot of things that were helpful, especially now that I'm, sitting in the seat, um, just opposite of where I was, previous years. And so having that understanding of the platform, having that understanding of what it's like to be typically an adult learner, someone who's probably working a full-time job, taking care of a family, I was able to apply my experiences that I had as a student or learner
Mhm.
to that of an adjunct professor. So I think I was more empathetic to, those students on the other side that were going through a very similar situation that I had. So those are
Mhm.
just a couple of examples of how I applied what I had to, something new, something
Mhm.
different. So
Those
I'll,
are
I'll
those are
end with
great
that.
anecdotes, Joe. The one that kind of resonates with me, I've got a couple of examples. One is again, Joe and I've talked about a lot of this stuff before, but I was military police, and when I got out of the military, um, and got into the corporate side of things, there's really no room for military police per se, at least not in the direction I was going. But I use that as an opportunity to network and
Mm,
to assist other internal business partners, whether it was in security or safety or that sort of thing. And several of the positions I had actually incorporated many of those pieces. So it was great to have a knowledge base in there. Um,
right.
the other piece I want to share is that doing military briefings is, with transitioning military, a lot of folks don't know what they want to do once they get out. And that's the same on the corporate side. If you're displaced or if you're rerouted or whatever, you find yourself in a position where you need to find other opportunities. Sometimes we don't know what we want to do, and that's okay. And what I share with them is you may have to fall back on some of these prior skills
Right.
to get
Yeah.
you to the next level, or at least to tide you over for a little bit till you can get where you want to be. So it may not be the thing that you want to do. It may not be your favorite thing. You might not even like it. But again, it's something that you have. It's an ability and set of skills that you have that you can use to your advantage. It may not mean that you enjoy it, but if it means making the bills or not making the bills,
Right.
sometimes
Yep.
we got to do what we got to do. And sometimes just doing that can lead to those opportunities, either through networking or demonstration of skills or demonstration of knowledge and expertise. It's really amazing that how you can turn a situation upside down into your benefit if you understand the skills and experience that you have and how to apply what you have.
That's absolutely it. And I think we've had a previous episode where we talked about tools in your toolbox or some to that effect, because that's exactly what it is. Being able to apply those skills that you already have into a new environment or a new thing. And like Dave said, in many cases, you do have to step back and utilize some of those skills that may be a little rusty, but they're still there. And I think that's what we've talked about in the past, is that you don't just displace them and move them out of the way, make room for something else. You still hold on to enough of it just in case you have to go back and recall. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's again a perfect example of what's happened to me in the last 5 years. In the military, I was a trainer. In other roles, I've been a trainer, and so the new company I'm working with now. That's the way I was hired in, as a trainer. But like Dave said, in last year, I was promoted into something else that was kind of more up to speed to where I am today. But I had to take that, step back to get to where I am again. So
Mm-hmm.
that is a common theme. And so again, if you can garnish those skills that you've had in the past, or things that have worked for you, brush them off a little bit, reapply them to that new environment, you're going to be better off, again,
Mm-hmm.
because you're applying what you have. And I think a lot of times when we face people, say you're in an interview, and they're giving you feedback and they say, hey, I see you have a lot of skills and abilities, but you don't have this particular thing. That's really unfortunate in a lot of cases, because they haven't really thought about all those other things that you have that could be, manipulated into applying it toward
Mhm.
whatever that thing is that they say you don't have. And so that's
Yeah.
unfortunate that we have people on the other side sometimes of that table that don't recognize that potential
Mhm.
that you have. And so that is a challenge for most
Yeah.
of us.
It reminds me of when I was doing policies and procedures for a company, and it's like, this is for operations for, a manufacturing company, and it's like, well, how does security come into play? Well, I wound up working with the security team within the organization and
Right.
revamp theirs. And then that led over into the safety side of things and then the fire side of things. So it's like, it's not so much that that's where I wanted to be, but I had enough of a knowledge base to network myself into other areas of the organization to expand my network. So when
Right.
there
Yep.
were reorgs or other opportunities that presented themselves, there were people there that could vouch for me or that wanted me to come help them and assist them. And that's, I think, one of those unforeseen benefits of networking.
Absolutely.
It's not so much what you know, it's what do you do with what you know and what do you
Right.
do with what you have. I didn't go back to doing security functions, but that knowledge base allows me to have a certain level of intellectual conversation with those that are more current in the field, to at least let them know, hey, I get it, we can have a reasonable conversation
Right.
without a one-upmanship or you don't understand. It's like, maybe I don't understand the last 12 months or the last 5 years,
Right.
but I've got a solid foundation. If we talk for about 10 minutes, we're on the same page and we're good to go. And the
Right.
same, it could be any industry. It could be retail, it could be marketing, it could be, business development, hospitality, whatever. You mean, whatever your background, trades, it's whatever. Everything always moves forward and advances, but it's that knowledge base that you can use to your advantage to help you grow, to help you position yourself to where you want to be, wherever that is, whatever you're doing. So, there's always going to be pieces that you can transfer and utilize. It may not be the actual job itself, but what skills in there? Was it the managing the projects? Was it managing people? Was it supervising, mentoring, coaching, training, etc.? So there's a really more opportunity there than people realize.
David, you bring up a very good point as far as the networking piece, and we both have done that ourselves.
Yeah,
Just met, I mean, again, we met each other by networking.
yeah.
And so the power in that, like you said, you're in an organization and you want to go somewhere. How do you do that? And the best way to do that is to find out who's in that area, that location that you want to go, and you start to communicate with them, whether it's,
Mhm.
find out they have a project that they're doing, a cross-functional project. Maybe sign up and say, hey, I want to help. Or you find out they're doing something that needs some type of assistance, you go provide assistance. That's really the only way people are going to get to know and trust that you have the ability to apply what you've used or had in the past, because you may not be doing that today, but like you said, you might have done that in the past, and just from a brief conversation, you might show that you recognize or understand that. And that's the biggest piece, is people that are in those positions to either hire you or select you, is because they don't know enough about you or your background. But
Mhm.
just a brief conversation, like you said, could help them understand, okay, this person does have, a good enough knowledge base to get them started.
Mhm.
They're not starting from the bottom, or with
Right.
no, experience or knowledge of it. So that could be very important, that networking piece. A perfect example, just a couple of weeks ago, someone asked me, you know, they said, hey, been watching your career here, and they're like, I saw you go from here to here. How did you do that? And that's what I told them. I said, hey, wherever you're trying to go, connect with those people in that organization or that department, wherever you're trying to go.
Right.
Help them understand what you bring to the table, what your skills are, what you have. And Dave said at the very beginning, what you have up there in your gray matter that's not obvious.
Mhm.
That's what people need to know. So that's exactly it. That networking piece. People are not going to know, even if you have all the credentials. You can lay out your resume and it's 5 pages long, but people can lie on their resumes. People can just ad lib on their resumes, but it's not until you have those conversations with people and to really show that you understand and know, then people will respect what they see and what they hear. So that's, sometimes it may have you coming out of your comfort zone,
Yeah,
but that sometimes is what it takes to get other people to know what you have,
sure,
and then
sure.
you can apply it.
And it brings a different perspective. I mean, you'd be surprised how many times Joe and I have had conversations with people about things that we, based upon our past experience, that became very relevant in those moments, whether it's from a mechanical or maintenance or safety and security side of things. And you see the light bulb go off and they're like, holy cow, I didn't think of that. We need to address
Right.
that,
Right.
hey, and then right there, you've just created an opportunity for yourself. Can you help us out with this?
Right. Yep.
There's your opportunity right there.
Yep.
You've just made that opportunity, and there is a lot of tact that goes into that, because you don't want to come across as a know-it-all, or trying to displace someone out of their position.
Right. Yep.
It's more out of place, out of the overall environment. How can I contribute? And just, if someone sees something that I'm doing that I've missed, I'm hoping that they're going to point out to me, say, hey Dave, you might want to look at that. I might want to say, hey Joe, you might want to look at that, because that's what we're here for. We're here to help each other, and that's part of it. I mean, we've used the analogy before that, the food in the kitchen is great, but the ship is sinking. So what's really the most important thing? Is it the
Right.
quality of
Yep.
the food, or is it to keep that ship from going under?
Right.
And yeah, so it's like, you have to think of the big picture all the time, and make sure that what you're doing is actually facilitating the bigger picture, not just your your agenda. So
Yeah, and I'll go back to, again, we've said it in a previous episode, the importance of just really taking stock of what you have in your toolbox,
mhm.
and then again seeing how it might apply in your existing organization or in your personal life. How can I take these skills? How can they be applicable here? And
Mhm.
me and Dave talk about this all the time, and the fact that our mind is always just one, just spinning. Just how can we apply this? How can we improve this? How can we make this better? And so sometimes that's where you end up when you really start to think of the bigger picture, and
Mhm.
not just, again, those things directly in front of you, but how will this apply later? How will this apply, to this current situation? It's not exactly the same, but how can I make it to where it does fit? So again, we talk about this all the time, that critical self-reflection, but it's also important to really take stock of what you've accomplished, whether
Mhm.
it's, writing it down, the steps sometimes it took to get there. And I think you'll realize that, you do have a lot of applicable skills to some other entity or some other organization or some other
Mhm.
thing. Just I think that's very important. So for me, like I say, I was an aircraft mechanic. I never really had any formal training on how to work on cars, but again, understanding the concepts behind, working on airplanes helped me to build car motors and do different things on the car, because again, I took those skills that I had from aircraft maintenance to, again, down to the automotive level, and I was able to do a lot of different things. So same thing, just switching things up a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of the same rules apply. It's just now just fitting it into that new thing that you're doing. And
Yeah,
that's what you can do with all the skills you bring to the table, whether it's project management or, leading a team. You may
critical
have been,
thinking,
yeah, absolutely, all those
planning,
things.
scheduling,
Absolutely.
evaluation,
Yep.
whatever. I mean, it's communication,
Yep.
drawing, your technical skills, your IT skills, whatever. And a lot of people think they don't have IT skills, or software application skills. But if you're using the computer and you're familiar with basic word processing, if you use some sort of database at work, or
Yep.
spreadsheets to keep track of your bills, or various writing documents and that sort of thing, those are computer skills that most people have. And it's
Right.
not saying
Yep.
that if you don't have them, that's bad. There are some things you don't need computer skills for, but a
Right.
lot of people have a lot of skills that they're not aware of. And that's one of the areas that we talk about in our conversation, is not only those skills and those things that you have, but the personal and professional side of how you can use these things, because there is so much crossover. If you learn something at work on how to balance a spreadsheet from a finance perspective, you could use that for your own budgeting at home.
Absolutely.
You
Yep.
know, and if you learn how to, work on aircraft in the military, you can use that to fix your car, like Joe said,
Right.
and if you learn how to communicate and train better through someplace else, maybe you can apply that to teaching your kids how to do something or how to learn to do something else. So a lot of these things that we talk about overlap significantly from the personal to the professional and from the professional to the personal. And it's one of the unique things about our podcast that we like to discuss, because there is that duality in life.
Right.
Most of us have to work or want to work or need to work. And when you're not working, do you have a personal side? And what do you do with
Right.
that? And how do you use what you learn on both sides to help things? Maybe you're passionate about, riding bicycles. Well, maybe that takes you down a path in your professional career that you hadn't thought about. Maybe you open up a bicycle business. Maybe you work for a bicycle shop. Maybe you just,
Right. Yep.
maybe it's just a passion and you help other people along the trails or the bike paths, So there's lots of different things that you can do when we talk about applying what you have, your skills, your knowledge, your technical abilities, your interpersonal skills. These things are not just static. They're not
Right.
a one and done.
And
It's not
stand
like,
alone. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's not, you don't dump the RAM and then restart over. It's like it's
Absolutely. Yeah.
always there.
Right. Well, yeah, I always like to think that there's a secondary, third, application that you can use or apply that to. And, years ago, I may not have thought that, but, I definitely believe in that now today. And like Dave said, and I think I said it earlier too, it's the idea that you don't just displace that information, knowledge, or skills that you had, that you just kind of build upon them or, cycle them to apply to something new. And so
Yeah.
that's the key, is to, again, not to do a brain dump. And that's why I say I said this just briefly about the idea that me and Dave have so many things swirl in our head, because we just know that we can apply it some other way. Even before we get on here, we were just having a conversation about, retooling something, renaming something, but we were like, no, it fits this way. And that's what it's all about, taking those past experiences, and then seeing how they apply today.
Mhm.
So,
And helping other people understand how to apply what they have.
right.
We're as Joe said, we're working on several things all the time. And we talk to people and they're like, well, I don't understand how I fit in. And then we show them and the light
Yep.
bulb goes off and they're like,
Absolutely.
oh, I
Yep.
get it. Or it
Right.
gets them thinking, they go, okay, I can do that. Oh, wait. But then they remember that they've done something similar, or maybe they did it on a much smaller scale, or
Right.
maybe they did it on a bigger scale, but it was so long ago that they can pull and reference that to build or develop or to work on something new or in a different direction that they hadn't even thought of before. Or maybe it's
Right.
merging several of their passions and skill sets into one really cool thing. Instead of just doing one of the 10 things that they're good at, they're doing 9 of the 10 things that they're good at and that they
Right.
enjoy. So it's really cool when you see that happen and you talk to people about different opportunities within themselves, within their organizations, within the workplace, the personal side of things, to really see them get the it things of the it of that thing,
Mhm.
and that's what really pushes the good buttons for Joe and I. It's like when you see that light bulb go off, when you see them pause for a moment and they go drift off and they come back and they've got a completely new perspective in like 5 or 10 seconds. It's like, that's the cool piece. It's like with
Right.
teaching,
Right.
students are struggling with a topic and then all of a sudden they get it. And it's like, there's that moment and it completely changes that whole scenario.
Yep. Yep. So it looks like we're approaching our time,
Yeah,
Dave. We're
yeah.
getting close. But yeah, I think, one of the main things is, and Dave said it, that new perspective, that we look at things and don't take it just for face value, but maybe to expand, to maybe open the aperture
Mhm.
of what it could be. I think that will help you see, that you'll have that light bulb moment, that, things, are more than they appear, and we can make them more than they appear if we just really think outside the box, really look beyond, what's directly in front of us. I know
Mhm.
most of us get tunnel vision. Most of us only see directly what's in front of us, and I think Dave mentioned it earlier in this conversation about, not just focusing on your agenda, And I think that can again get you tunnel vision and
Mhm.
kind of a narrow-minded focus. But the more you really look at how it fits in the big picture, even like he said too, when we're helping other people see how they fit in it, uh, then it starts to make sense. It's because a lot of times we don't focus on the bigger picture. We just
Yeah.
see the immediate need,
Yeah.
how can we fix it today? But the reality is, if you don't fix it for the long term, you'll be coming back over and over
Yeah.
again, reliving that same thing
Yeah.
because we haven't taken the time to really think through it, to really figure it out so that it doesn't occur again. Or if it does, it's at a more minimal impact than it has been, consistently. And that's what really has drove me to, instead of just doing these quick fixes, these things we keep having to do over and over again, let's do some long-term fixes. And that goes back to, again, my experience in aircraft maintenance, where, you get that mindset of, okay, let's just fix it when it breaks. Then you're really putting yourself at
Yeah.
a very critical
Cost
point or
the cost is
disadvantage.
significantly more.
Absolutely. When we really take the time and think about, what you're losing, because every time so in our case, when the equipment would go down, we're scrambling for 12, 16 hours, sometimes 2 or 3 days trying to get it back up to speed because we weren't prepared. We didn't have
Mhm.
parts. We didn't have, spares or anything like that. We eventually got to a point where we had, downtime that we dedicated downtime where we would take the equipment down. We would build spares. So then
Mhm.
if there was a crash, then we had everything we needed. And versus, 16 hours, 18 hours, we could have it up and running in 2 hours
Yeah.
because we were prepared. I know you can't prepare for every situation, but if you can kind of narrow it down to those common things that occur, the common
Yeah.
things that happen, then you can at least prepare for those things. And then you can,
Yeah.
as you knock those little things out and manage those, then you can start to, apply those same concepts to the bigger fish or the bigger things that cause you, a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
So yeah, just we all have done things that can be applied to something else. It's just you again taking stock of those tools. What have you
Yeah.
accomplished? What have you done?
Yeah, and I like what you said about the quick fixes. Tape and super glue is great and they have their purposes,
Right.
but they should not be your long-term solution.
Exactly. Right. Right. Yeah. Again, we know sometimes that's what I've had it on my bike. I'm riding. I had an issue. My chain got wadded up, and I had a little toolbox, but I had to go in and just get the repair enough to get home. But then when I got home, I could take it apart, really take a look at what was happening, and I discovered or uncovered something had gotten bent. My bike had fallen over or something, and I didn't realize it, and something got out of alignment, misaligned. But while I'm on the trail and I just wanted to get back home, I just did enough to get me back home. So yeah, those
And
quick
there again, that's
fixes, band-aids.
understanding and applying what you have.
Absolutely. So
So,
yeah, again, we do it more than we think. So
mhm.
now it's just, I think we're just recommending or suggesting that you really just take time and think about, what you have and then how you can apply it, whether it's in, again, your professional setting or at home. What are those things that you've accomplished in the past? What are those
Yeah.
things that you've done that may be a slightly different, but can still be applied to a new situation, a new environment? And that's what we're really just suggesting, that you really take a look at everything you've done. And again, you'd be amazed at the similarities or how they actually intertwine with one another, that it's a really easy application change,
Yeah,
or just apply it to this new thing. So
absolutely. So, real quick, any final words of wisdom or thoughts? Real
uh
quick.
yeah, just I know that the last part I was just rambling a little bit, but again, we just
That's what we do.
but like I say, we don't get too far away from just all of these concepts and ideas really locking or interrelating with the other topics and things that
Mhm.
we've discussed. That we can't say this enough: critical self-reflection, just always doing that and always evaluating, taking a look at what you have, and again, where you want to go. That's just, you're not going to get there unless you have kind of identified where you are and then identify that destination. So utilizing all those skills and knowledge, experiences, tools you have in your toolbox, it's just gonna, you'll see that they're not just one and done, like Dave said. They're more that, how can I just expand upon it? How can I elaborate? How can I make this now apply to this new thing? And so,
Yep.
just again, we just encourage you to really just take stock of where you are and put yourself in a position where you can apply what you already have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. With that, we'd like to thank our viewers and listeners for listening in and tuning into another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. If you like this episode or enjoyed this episode or any of the other plethora of episodes that we produced, then give us a like and share, and get the word out there that, hey, this is something worth listening to on your drive to work or at home while you're just doing whatever you do at home. So until next time, keep on being your not so ordinary you.